We're back again this season, which is the 24-25 season, with our Critic Circle colleagues and friends who are going to talk about the shows they most want to see when the new season gets here. And they are...
Good morning. I'm David Sheward, and I write for Theater Life, Cultural Daily, and Total Theater, all.com. And my shows that I am looking forward to seeing are McNeil on Broadway, the musical Tammy Faye, and off-Broadway, the Kenneth Branagh revival of King Lear.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Lefkowitz, and the longtime podcaster of Dave's Gone By, former managing editor of Playbill.com, also used to be an editor for StageBuddy.com, a lot of years in the theater, and looking forward to a couple of shows coming up on and off Broadway this season. For example, there's the drama English by Sanaa Toossi that won the Pulitzer. There's Yellowface, a really, really good play by David Henry Hwang that's coming up. And also a new Kenneth Lonergan play called Hold On To Me, Darling.
And I'm Leslie Hoban Blake, and my shows are on Broadway, Death Becomes Her, and then two off-Broadway shows, because I can't help it. Shit, Neat, Fan, I didn't just want to say that, and Cats.
And I'm Charles Gross, Two on the Aisle, which you probably know if you've been watching the show. And I will be talking about A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical, Gypsy, a revival of that classic musical with Audra MacDonald, and Drunk, Dracula.
So, why don't we get started? David Sheward, would you like to tell us something about your show?
Sure. Well, on Broadway is a new play called McNeil by Ayad Akhtar, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright. And it is going to be in the Vivian Beaumont at Lincoln Center, and it will mark the Broadway debut of recent Oscar and Golden Globe winner Robert Downey Jr. for he won for Oppenheimer, and it sounds like a really interesting show. He plays a Nobel Prize-winning author who is encountering writer's block and dealing with his alienated son and various issues coming up, and the big issue of AI. And part of the show will include a, quote, highly realistic meta-human digital likeness of Mr. Downey in character. So that all sounds very interesting, and he will be co-starring with Tony winners Ruthie Ann Miles and Andrea Martin, which is, she's always a delight. They're both always delights. For the musical, I have chosen Tammy Faye, which is a musical about the notorious televangelist Tammy Faye Baker, which was a big hit in London. It received 4 Olivier nominations. And the London star of that show, Katie Braben, is starring along with Christian Borle, playing her husband, Jim Baker, and Michael Cerveris will be playing the televangelist Jerry Falwell. It features a score by Elton John, which is very exciting, and with lyrics by Jake Shears of the Scissor Sisters. And it will be the first full Broadway musical production in the newly renovated and elevated Palace Theater. Off-Broadway, I am looking forward to seeing Kenneth Branagh as King Lear at the Shed. And the show has played in London, where it did receive mixed reviews, but I'm still looking forward to it. Branagh also directed it. It's supposed to be only 2 hours with no intermission, and very fast-moving and lots of action.
Fast-moving King Lear seems a bit oxymoronic, but be that as it may. Dave Lefkowitz?
The shows that I'm looking forward to seeing, I'm moving into the play thing, and kind of a degrees of separation here of Roundabout and Atlantic people for the shows. Just works out that way of the 3 choices I have. For example, there's English, a play by Sanaa Toossi, won the Pulitzer, and the Roundabout is co-producing it off-Broadway at the Atlantic Theater. And what I like about that is I'm I'm an educator, so I'm a sucker for plays about teachers, going all the way back to like Hyman Kaplan and other plays like that. It's about these Iranian women in Iran who are taking the TOEFL, and they want to learn English, but they're caught between their old world values and the parental stuff versus wanting to move into modern language, into an English Western world, as opposed to the world that's given us what it's given us. So I find that kind of fascinating, and the reviews were great for it. There's also a new play by Kenneth Lonergan, excuse me, called Hold On To Me, Darling, about a country singer. Okay, not all that interesting to me in terms of, but it's Lonergan just has a way with putting out human drama there in a believable, slightly askew way. He just has that gift. I haven't loved all of his plays. I didn't love Lobby Hero, but they did a revival of the Waverly Gallery a few years ago with Elaine May. And I just thought that was a lovely play. And he did You Can Count on Me as a film. So if he's on his game, it's going to be wonderful watching the humans in his play. And then there's Yellowface, a play that I know is actually really, really good. It's David Henry Hwang, the Golden Child guy, the M. Butterfly guy. He writes these really complex plays that move so simply you don't realize how deep they are until you're suddenly halfway through them and you see all the layers of things that are going on. It has to do with Hwang's actual own story, protesting Miss Saigon because they were using yellowface of a non-Asian actor to play this engineer character. So he's in the play as a character himself, Hwang. He's not acting in the show, but there's a character based on him. It's funny. There's also stuff about his family and his father that gets kind of touching towards the end. In other words, if this is a good production, it's going to be an excellent, excellent show.
I have 3 shows that I'm very excited about, and one of them is Gypsy. This is the iconic musical, Jules Stein, Stephen Sondheim. And of course, each new production is, well, which diva is going to play the lead? Who's going to play Rose? And I thought the only diva who hadn't done it was Charles Busch, but turns out Audra MacDonald has never done the role on Broadway. And this will be interesting, not just because Audra is playing the role, but because George C. Wolfe will be directing. It will be interesting to see how he approaches the show. Is he going to do a traditional Gypsy that plays off Audra's talents? There'll be a race factor. Will he just try and update or go in a different direction with the show? Personally, I think Gypsy is an amazing show, stands as it is, really doesn't need any updating. And I think Audra is just going to knock it out of the park. Second, off-Broadway, Drunk Dracula. I don't know. We've been having these very strange Draculas this past season. We had like a Theater of the Ridiculous type Dracula. Now this is Drunk Dracula. This is a company that one of the performers has 5 drinks and they attempt to tell the story. And I'm thinking, well, it's an interesting approach. I think they've done this mostly with Shakespeare. I've never actually seen one of their productions, so I think it's time I had the experience. And finally, a jukebox musical that I am very much looking forward to, or a review, whatever you would like to call it, A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical. Louis Armstrong is one of the most iconic jazz musicians, singers ever. He broke barriers. He had a large, diverse audience who loved him. And he was just an amazing person. In fact, his house in Queens is now a museum, and I believe they've expanded on that to another building. I've always enjoyed his music. And by the way, what you are watching right now is a parade that the production had to celebrate the opening of their box office, where they had a traditional New Orleans band march from Duffy Square to the box office at Studio 54. You have James Monroe Iglehart, who last year was King Arthur in Spamalot, but it's probably best known as the genie in Aladdin on Broadway, in the title role. Satchmo, welcome to Broadway.
Well, Thank you. My three, as I mentioned before, Death Becomes Her, which is one of my favorite all-time movies and has never been more timely, even though it was done back in the 90s, because there's just never been a time when beautifying older women has become a thing. You go on television, there are 82 different women telling you how to put on eye makeup and whatnot if you're over 50. Don't forget, this was a movie starring Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn, who were not exactly ancient when they made the movie, and are still in their prime, both of them. And it's going to be Meghan, Hilty, and Jennifer Simard. And I'm not sure which one plays which, so when we talk together, I'd like somebody to straighten that up for me. I would assume that Meghan Hilty might play Goldie Hawn, but I'm not sure. And that will be at the Lunt-Fontanne, and that starts in November, which is very exciting. And it's a brand new musical. It's based on a movie, but it's not been a musical, and it's not a jukebox musical. So that makes it a kind of a musical. And then Shit Meet Fan is by one of our favorite, Charlie and myself, of Robert O'Hara. This is written and directed by Rob, and it will be at the MCC Newman Space. The name is so long, it also includes Robert Wilson in the name. It's just that name has gotten longer and longer, starting in October. But Shit Meet Fan, and it's period after each one of the words, is about a group of couples who meet all the time, and they put their phones on the table, and whatever is on their phone gets shared among everybody in the group. And all I can see is disaster. Go back. Do not play this game. Be smart enough to erase your phone. Do something. But this is the game, and that's the way it's played. So obviously a comedy of manners, one would assume, given what goes on. My last is something that I missed the first time around, which was 2010, I believe, and that was Gats at the Public. Charlie and I did get to see the Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises, that elevator repair service did, and it was just amazing. We both were gobsmacked by it. But we missed Gats, which was the very first time that the group Elevator Repair Service had tried to read an entire book on stage, a novella in this case. Gats is only The Great Gatsby is only a novella, and Gats, of course, is The Great Gatsby's real name, James Gats. But again, I don't know if they're going to change it. I don't know if they're going to do it exactly as it was. Parts of it are already on YouTube. I don't mean already, but I mean from the first thing. It's gone all over the world. And interestingly enough, it couldn't play here. It was done 2 or 3 years before it actually appeared at the Public. But because of a prearranged, they were hoping to bring another version to Broadway, and so they didn't want any competition. Well, we've been Gatsby'd to death because Gatsby went into public domain. Shall we open this up to discussion of each other's plays? Who'd like to start?
Hold On to Me, Darling is not technically a new play because it has been done off Broadway previously at the Atlantic Theater Company. So that's another.
Is that with Adam Driver as well?
No, this was before. This was in like 2018, I think. And it was Timothy Oliphant, I think.
Okay. This is where we have David Sheward amongst our guests, because whatever mistakes we make, he'll fix them up.
And I remember it quite distinctly it's a good. I enjoyed it. It's a very good play. And there was a scene at a funeral, and in the audience, someone's cell phone went off, and it wasn't just a normal ring. It was a real annoying cartoon kind of a boing sound, like a cartoon character bouncing along. And it went boing, boing, boing. And this was during the funeral scene. And one of the actors actually said, don't you hate it when you're at a funeral and someone's cell phone goes off and they don't know how to turn it off?
One question.
The audience get hysterical over that line?
Yes, and it was very uncomfortable, but it passed, you know.
I have a question for Charlie. I didn't see it, but wasn't there a production of Dracula off Broadway over on like the Fairbanks Theater, not that a couple of years ago? It was normal. I mean, they were trying to do a straight version as opposed to campy, as opposed to.
Yes.
Did you guys see it? Or
I saw it. Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't see it, and again, I was referring more to Broadway.
Yeah, this is an off Broadway. Yeah. It was with Timothy Jerome as Van Helsing. It was quite bad, from what I remember.
Oh, it was Dracula, so it sucked.
Yes,
Bum,
it
bum.
was
Oh,
quite bad.
no, that was
Thank you
Dave's.
very
That's
much.
Dave's morning joke. But we absolutely adored the one at New World Stages that Artie Burton was in. That was just amazing. And that Dracula was the hunkiest Dracula I've ever seen, even including Frank Langella. I'm sorry. It was just wild. And
It's interesting about Gatsby. I did see that 7 hour, or yeah, I think it's
I
7
forgot
hours.
to mention it takes 8 hours if you want to see it. Right?
I forget if it was 7 or 8 hours. It's quite a good production, and I imagine it would be the same. And I wonder if the Gatsby, there is the current Gatsby musical on Broadway right now, still playing, and the ART Gatsby. I wonder if there are any plans for that to bring it into New York. I guess they have to wait for the other Gatsby to finish, so they wouldn't have dueling Gatsbys.
As I said, we're going to be Gatsby to death because it's in public domain now, so nobody has to pay to use it. To use it. That's a tremendous savings when
Sure.
figuring on the show.
I think we've got a wonderful season coming up. I'm also looking forward to Yellowface. I'm familiar with this show. I'm trying to remember if I've actually seen it. I don't think I have.
It was at the Public.
I did see it.
Yeah.
I did see it. I do remember it. And David Henry Wong is one of my favorite playwrights. I may be one of the few people who really enjoyed what he did with Flower Drum Song.
Oh, yes. The rewriting of it.
Right.
He didn't ruin it. I don't think he made it great, but it was.
Well,
Yeah.
He took a very different approach and a very new story. In fact, the original version, Hammerstein version, is actually closer to the book Flower Drum Song.
There's a lot of other productions which sound really interesting. Like there's a Romeo and Juliet on Broadway, which sounds very radical. There's this revival.
Right, they're actually having a production where Romeo is back in the title.
Oh, right, the musical and Juliet, yes, and Sunset Boulevard. The revival of that sounds very interesting. And
did you see that in London, David? Did you get to see that?
No, I haven't been to London in a while.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting. I want to bank on that because people kind of you hear Andrew Lloyd Webber, the eyes roll. You even hear Sunset Boulevard is a very good musical, and it's all the Sondheim freaks among them. It's sort of like, oh, Andrew Lloyd Webber, I mean, if they do it right, Sunset Boulevard works.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's got some beautiful.
If it's cast right,
yeah.
According to this, she's wonderful, but she's also, although she's the right age, she looks too young. I mean, the problem for Gloria Swanson was she was 50, but she looked 50. In those days, she was only 50.
She was 50 because Gloria Swanson was, well, it's interesting. Swanson was like a teenager when she, or very, very young when she was a silent film star. And and it's interesting, the Glenn Close, both in the original Broadway production and in the revival, did a brilliant job. In the revival, she was totally different. It was a totally different performance.
I felt on that revival, I felt Glenn Close was having her Norma Desmond moment in that show. I felt that she was well beyond the point where she could really do justice.
Did she no longer sing it, or what do you mean? Or
I'm sorry, I felt she was too old for the role.
Oh, no, I thought she was just right. I thought she is a performer who can do anything really, and she transcends. And it was kind of appropriate. She was the right age, I thought, in both the original and the revival.
She was well over 50, and it seemed like art was imitating life in this particular case. I'll tell you the actress who I would love to have seen in Sunset Boulevard. This will never happen. And is Carol Burnett, who lampooned Norma Desmond for years for her show. But I really think she could have done an amazing job.
No, she's 90 now, so
obviously, as I said, it's not going to happen. But it's certain actresses I would have loved to have seen in certain roles.
But it is interesting that both the two plays about women aging and whatnot are on in the same year. They're very different approaches.
Speaking of Andrew Lloyd Webber, I don't know if anyone has heard this. There is a rumor that Britney Spears is going to be playing the narrator in a film version of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dream.
Oh,
In a version
I
of
buy
what?
that.
I missed that. A version of what?
Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dream.
Oh, okay. I don't have a problem.
I
with
could
that.
see that. I could see that.
That doesn't bother me.
You know,
It was
why
supposed to
not?
be a pop opera anyway, so that's
Yes.
fine.
I'm also looking forward to the film, evidently the film version of Wicked, which is only
Oh God, yes.
the first act is two
I
and a half
know.
hours. So I remember seeing a commercial for it on the Super Bowl when they and it looks exciting.
Yes. The most appropriate ad placement ever is Wicked on the Super Bowl. Yes.
Yeah, well, I only watched the Super Bowl for the commercials.
So is it supposed to be a two-parter? Are they going to make?
Yes.
Oh wow!
This is just the first part. Yes. And
David-
maybe take more material from Gregory Maguire's book. I
Oh,
don't know.
oh,
But I'm really curious, and it opens during the holiday season. This will be interesting how it does with the Oscars and the Golden Globes to see how if a musical can have a big impact.
Hearing all this makes me a little disappointed that I don't live in or near New York anymore. I'm like 200 miles away in Maryland. So if I get to see maybe 4 of the shows that we've been talking about, I'll feel lucky this year. And you make me want to see all of them. So thanks for reminding me what I'm missing.
oh. Well, we're sorry about that.
Yeah, there is a lot.
Anybody else have anything else?
The Hills of California by Jez Butterworth is coming to Broadway. That sounds very interesting. Delia Ephron has a play based on her memoir, Left on 10th, about finding love again after her husband has passed away, and then encountering illness after her sister Nora Ephron has passed away. And it's I'm curious to see how that will be adapted to the stage.
I didn't read the book, so I don't know if that's a rollicking comedy or not. I'm having trouble with plays about death recently. I really am having trouble with that. But
and yet that's exactly the topic that you chose
yes,
for one of your plays.
Well, Death Becomes Her, but not for that reason. It was that Death Becomes Her was funny, and it was about something else.
I think they're going to be doing next season Long Life of a Salesman. Interesting to see that.
If you want to see any of these shows, we hope we've given you some information. You can go to Playbill online and look at their upcoming season, both on Broadway and off Broadway. You'll be able to pick these up in a second and find out more about them and the dates if we forgot to give them to you. Although I think we pretty much
or just type their names into your browser
or just type the names into the browser. And in any case, thank you guys for getting up early on a Sunday, comparatively early on a Sunday. For me, this is early on a Sunday.
David Sheward, David Lefkowitz, thank you again.